ជម្រាបសួរ First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Va, and I'm the moderator for these sections. So it is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the Cambodia First International Virtual Conference on Mentoring Educators. The theme is Mentoring and Professional Development for Educators. The conference is held for 3 days from the 21st to 23rd December 2020. It is a great opportunity for us to participate in this conference. It involves many guest speakers, not only from Cambodia, but also from some countries in Asia, Australia, the United States of Africa, and South Africa. So, since everyone is here, before going to the presentation section, I would like to inform something to all participants. So, all attendees mic are muted by default. And if you have any question, please kindly drop them in the chat box. And you also can use headphone to hear the presentation better. And since this is a workshop, so I would like everyone to participate in the workshop together. Also, if the presenter needs us to turn on our videos, so please turn on our video together. And well, our guest speakers is Assistant Professor Pauline and Therese M. Mangula Banan. Sorry if I cannot, if that's not wrong, if that's not right, sorry. From the University of Fukui, Japan, will be presenting about a workshop practice record means to support school-based professional learning, a lesson study structure. So I would like to clarify to our guest speaker that you have time 1 hour, including question and answer sections. So now I would like to welcome our guest speaker to present. Thank you. So welcome.
Okay, there. Now, Tumripsu, thank you so much for your introduction. Yes, and you said my family name correct. So I'm Pauline Mangulabnan. Before anything else, can you see the chat box right now? And there's a file that I uploaded. For all the participants, I would appreciate if you can download the file. So that is originally in Japanese, and then I translated it to English. Okay, so I hope everybody is downloading the file, but what I will just do is let me share my screen. And then I do present. Let's see. It's taking a while, right? Now, are you seeing my screen? That's good? Okay. And can you hear me? Can you all give like 8 thumbs up, at least in the reactions part? Okay. So as introduced, my name is Pauline Therese Mangulabnan. I'm a Filipino, but I'm currently here based in Japan. So yeah, I'm working in Japan. Before anything else, actually, I'm very sad that we're doing this online because I really, really love Cambodia. The first time I went to Cambodia was 9 years ago for one of the that was the 5th or 4th international conference on mathematics and mathematics education. So that's the time I met Maitri and also Chandrawas, and from that day onwards, we've really been working together. So I'm so happy to have been informed about this conference. And then the picture in the middle is actually me swimming at the Mekong River. So along Phnom Penh, there's that part of the Mekong. And then they said there are a lot of crocodiles. I didn't know, but that's the Mekong River. I need to swim. And then the last one was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was like 6 years ago, where I taught it's just for 2 days, a mathematics class. What was the name of the university? It was a new university that time, but it's in, yeah, mathematics education. So these were the students. So I'm very, very happy, and thank you again for organizing this conference. So what I would want to share in this workshop really is, because my main field of work, I work with teachers, I do teacher training. I would want to share on what do Japanese teachers write about, because we've been talking about people has to do research and all this, but then this morning our plenary speakers actually said that there's, especially about collaborative research, that what teachers can write and what university researchers can write should not be separate. Rather, we should be collaborating. So my main field really is, I work with teachers as a researcher, but them not being an object, or not being a subject, but I work and I research with them. And I got all this idea from Japan. So I may be working here, teaching teachers here, but I also do work and do projects in the Philippines, in Africa, and other countries. So one of the things also that I always think about is, are these things that I'm seeing here in Japan possible outside Japan? So what I would want to do in this workshop is really share with you some of the few things that I am learning here. So to begin with, I'm a math teacher after my graduation back in 2007 in the Philippines. And then I worked as a teacher trainer. And then I also worked as a school principal in the Philippines while also being a math teacher. And I worked and taught at the university. After that, 6 years ago, I came here in Japan. And not Tokyo, Kyoto, or anywhere else, but I'm actually here in Fukui. So where is Fukui? It's that red dot over here. It's nearer to Osaka and Kyoto, very far from Tokyo, about 500 kilometers. But if you could see from here. But one of the things about Fukui is that when it comes to national exams for elementary and secondary students, we have been topping. We have the highest academic and physical performances in national exams for the past 10 years. So that's why I personally also, I am enjoying learning here, looking at how teachers are actually being prepared to be able to achieve such kind of results. So during my first trip to Japan, I think this was 7 years ago, these were some of the photos that I took. What you would see here actually is that, yes, they're seated, but they are clustered into groups. And these are just regular classes, but I can see how the students' faces are actually so into what they're doing, how the teachers are laughing. And there are a lot, because I'm a math education major, so there's a lot of tools, a lot of drawings, a lot of figures being done in the math classes. And this actually hasn't changed since the last time I came here. So I just got this from YouTube, but I would want to show you at least a picture of how energetic and lively Japanese classes are. Okay, so I would stop it there. You could also always rewatch that. There are some translated classroom videos that you can find in YouTube. But one of the things that I really want to stress out with that one is you could see, oops, that the students, as you just go and watch, the general atmosphere is that there's a sense of community, because when there was that kid saying like, okay, let me try, but she is not really that good in Japanese, go ahead, just go, continue. The students, it's so noisy, the classroom is so noisy, but it's a very positive kind of noise wherein you can see how the students have this freedom to express themselves. They're very excited. There's just one question on the board. The students are like working in groups, and the Blackboard is so simple. Even if you can see, the teacher is just recording what the students are saying. So these are some elements in the classes here in Japan that actually had impressed me during my first visit, that made me want to stay a few more years. So by 2015, I entered as a graduate student, but at the same time, I was teaching at a junior high school here in Japan. So I get to understand the professional learning communities of the teachers, what we call as lesson study, how the teachers are actually researching about their own practice, like what Professor Maitri from Konkan was sharing earlier this morning. And then by 2017, I started working at the university as a researcher. And now, currently in present, as I also pursue my doctor, I'm working as my PhD. I'm also working as a teacher trainer, as an assistant professor, which bulk of my work really is to go to the classroom and work with teachers. So that's basically my background. And with this kind of work that I do with teachers, visit to the classroom, let me share with you some of the trivial practices in schools. Like the schools that I work with, instead of calling groups, we call them communities. Because what we want is for students to really work together with each other. And they would always have student leaders or community or committees, like what you saw a while ago, like, okay, who's gonna talk next? So that student leader changed every subject. We have classes wherein students in grade 4, grade 5, grade 6 would actually present to each other. And then there's a lot of documentation and reflection happening. And I think our first two plenary talks also had emphasized on the importance of reflection for the development of teachers and also of research. So, and then this is how like an elementary classroom looks like. Again, they still have the same thing. The main goal really is to create a community of learners, wherein instead of them competing for grades or competing against each other, they're helping each other work together and learn. So this is a typical class in Fukui, where I'm from. The teacher would give a general question, a broad question that everyone would try to do on their own. And then eventually, with their seatmates, they would share. And then whatever, like what Professor Maitri was sharing a while ago, after that, each group would be sharing their own ideas. And then from there, okay, so what are these new ideas that we were able to create? So the majority of this work is actually done by the students. But then again, like what Professor Maitri said, much of the work done by the teachers happened before the class, preparing and looking for these kinds of open-ended questions. And even during the pandemic, we're in for some time, for 2 months, we actually did online teaching, online education here. So the only difference now is that the teacher would have to be more in control, a bit more, because once the students, like what we're doing in Zoom right now, goes to breakout sessions, whatever they're talking about, the teacher tries to listen, and then in the end sum it up. But whatever the teacher would say during what we call as neriage, or that whole class discussion, would always come from the student. And so you really put a lot of trust to the students that they can do something. So that in Japan, in the schools, and this is what we're also trying to achieve in the Philippines and in Africa, we would want to empower the schools and the teachers, that they would have autonomy in designing the curriculum. So what happens is that in Japan, for every 10 years, the Ministry of Education revises the course of study. For example, the new course of study would be implemented, well, is being implemented from this year for the elementary, next year for the junior high school, and then next year for the senior high school. But what is impressive here is that every school has still the autonomy to design their own curriculum. So the Ministry of Education gives them something, and then afterwards, based through the lesson study in the schools, the teachers can recreate the curriculum. What is in the the major changes that they're doing with the current revisions in the curriculum is that the Ministry of Education here in Japan wants to improve the classes by focusing on deep active learning. But what do they mean by deep active learning? So it's not just deep learning, active learning, but really deep active learning. So they said that deep active learning in the classroom would take place if the students will take initiatives toward their own learning. So it's not the teacher telling them what to do, but the students being interested and saying that, oops, wait, I want to try this. Or the students being able to reflect, saying that, okay, this is what I was able to achieve right now. Okay, next meeting, I want to try this. Or I wasn't able to really do the quadratic equation. Next meeting, I would want to try to practice so that I could do it faster, for example. So them being able to reflect on their own progress so that they can design their next learning. Deep active learning also means interactive learning, wherein it's not just one student learning on his own, but them collaborating. So what happens right now is that one idea of the other student can be heard by another student, so that these students would have two ideas instead of just one. And then, yeah, of course, deep active learning, meaning deep learning, wherein the students are now the ones forming their own ideas. So that in this revision, this is not just done by the Ministry of Education, but the revisions on the new curriculum are actually based on school-based research practice of teachers in collaboration with teacher educators and the local board of education. So this is what Professor Paul, was it Paul, the first speaker? Did I get his name right? The first panel from Canada, saying that the teacher educators and the teachers in the school should be working together. So that here in Japan, at least here in Fukui, the teachers do their research in the classroom. Not a lot with the related literature or the methodology, but they really research about their practice. The teachers publish this, and an example is the one that I have put in the chat box, so that the teachers actually have a voice in the revision of the curriculum. This is how you empower, how Japan is empowering the teachers. And because the Ministry of Education listens to this research by the teachers, together with the university teacher educators, then the students also are given a voice, because the teachers do write about the students. Why is it not working? Okay, so this kind of teacher research is more commonly known here in Japan as lesson study. For some countries in Europe, they would call it learning study. If you speak Japanese, we would just call it Jugyo Kenkyu. So basically, it's a research about whatever is happening in the learning situation. It could be about the content, it could be about the teacher, how the teacher teaches, it could be about how the students are learning. But basically, like what Professor Maitri has been saying, this has been dating back since the Meiji era, about 100, 150 years ago. Wherein the main source of teacher learning, more than the university, is the classroom itself. So classroom visits is part are part of the practices of the teacher. So before, the lesson study that the teachers are doing is to create the curriculum. Now it has been evolving from creating the curriculum to actually creating teachers, developing teachers to be reflective practitioners. So this lesson learning study is known worldwide. Actually, there's now a conference. Some of you might have heard of the World Association of Lesson Study. And just early this 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago? We had an online conference also. Next year, the conference would be in Hong Kong. Macau, Hong Kong. So I hope you guys can join in. So this is one of the biggest conferences wherein we focus on the practice of the teacher. Not much on what is the related literature, what is the research question, but what do you really do as a teacher? So that lesson or learning study is a professional development inquiry that enhances teachers' professionalism through the classroom. So how are you thinking in the classroom, and how are the students thinking in the classroom? That's basically the main core of lesson study. So it's known as PDCA, the plan, do, check, act. Like teachers plan together, they implement the class, then they talk about it, and then we reflect and try. Some would call it, in the States, the lesson study in the state is study, plan, conduct, reflect. So that kind of cycle. But these are all different kinds of lesson studies. These are other variations of lesson study. The one up here is the Philippine variation. This one is lesson research. So this is US. This one is Australia. And this one is UK. So like what Professor Mater was saying, they had also created their own variation, tweaked lesson study from Japan to fit the Thai context. What I'm doing right now is I'm working with African countries, and they are retweaking the lesson study from Japan so it would suit Ghana, Uganda, Malawi. So it's my hope also to be working with Cambodian teachers, so we can now create a lesson study suited for the Cambodian teachers. Yeah, but here at the University of Fukui, where I'm from, the kind of lesson study that we do is what we call as reflective lesson study. Wherein what we do really is, as a teacher designs the lesson, puts it into practice, we reflect, and the end product of reflection is to reconstruct. Like what the second panel plenary speaker was saying, that an important thing about reflection happens if you're able to use what you have learned and transform it to something else. So what we do here is, as we teachers reflect together, like what Professor Maitri was saying, that every week they would come back and talk about it. So as a result, how are you going to improve the next week? So, and part of this reflective lesson study is that we believe that the continuous growth of teachers also happens when they are writing, reading, and sharing what we call as reflective practice records. So basically, this one, for those who have visited Japan and attended some of its lesson study, you would always see this kinds of paper wherein this has not just the lesson plans, but actually what had happened last year, what were we researching last year, and how is it affecting what we are going to do, what we are doing this year. So this is what we call as practice record. So it's a product of an individual teacher's inquiry into his or her own classroom, and also of that collaborative inquiry that happens in lesson study. It's okay not to call it lesson study. Some countries would call it PLC. Some would call it professional collaboration. That's okay. But what is important here really is that professional collaboration that's taking place with the same vision of improving oneself as a teacher and also improving learning. So, okay, too much talking from me now. What I would want to do is for you guys to also be able to read these practice records. And for the lesson study of the schools I'm working with, the year-long lesson study actually begins from reading practice records. So why do we have to do this? At least before I make you read one. When we read practice records, it's not about, you don't have to finish the whole thing, okay? The main purpose really is for us to gather some usable knowledge, because these are practice records written by teachers. So you may not be able to implement everything, but as you read through it, you could probably get some hints. Oops, okay, I can add this element into my teaching also. Oh, this will not work for my class because, okay? So it's not to really finish that whole article right away. In reading practice records, please try to follow the structure of the inquiry process as narrated by the teacher in the writing. Because as we try to follow this, it also starts our own inquiry as practitioners, and that kind of inquiry would mean continuous reflection and thinking about our own practices. So the idea here is to really to be able to follow the development of the learning of the students, we have to carefully read the text, not necessarily finish the text. Okay, so in the chat box, I had uploaded a file. So I probably give you around 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes should be okay. To read through it. Again, you don't have to finish it. And as you read, please try to take some notes. What are some of the things that you could probably look into? One is, what is the content based on the writer? So we call this tracing. It could be the content of who are the students, not necessarily just the subject content. The second one is, as a reader, what points caught your attention? And then, are there connections between the text and your own experiences as teachers? And what could this mean in your own future practice? You don't have to answer all of this, but at least as you read, these are some of the things you could take into consideration. Okay, so about 10 minutes. Hi everyone, welcome back. Do we have everyone? Not yet. 32, 31. Let me just share. I want to share something. We have 33. Some are still in their groups. Now, how many do we have? Let me know when everybody's back, okay? Thank you. Oh, there. Now we have 33. While we're waiting for the others, I do understand. Don't be scared of it, because what you could just do, that the reason why I shared the file is so that you have a copy of it, and then you can just put it in Google Translate so you can read it also faster. It may not be the perfect translation, but if you read both of it, it's okay. That's also what I do with my Japanese, so. $34. How many do we have, Mr. Coordinator?
Now we have 34. Actually, before this we have like more than 40. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just wait for them. 1 minute. The others, yeah, let's wait for them. We have 34. Anyway, but in 1 minute, it's either they're coming back or they probably have left the room and the meeting, and they're coming again. Let's see.
Okay, now I think we could start now, I think.
Okay. So anyway, before I share my PowerPoint again, I hope everybody had some sort of discussions. I shared the file also because you can do something like this. You could just copy paste it and then Google Translate, so you can reread it again. With technology right now, language is not that big of a barrier anymore, for as long as we share documents. So this is something that you could also do. Okay, so going back, let me check where is my slides. Okay, not this. Wait. There goes my slides. Okay, so you can see my slide now, right? So I hope you guys had some kind of discussion. It's okay if you didn't finish it again. You were able to share some of your ideas or impressions on what we read. This is so I have also shared this practice record in this workshop in Uganda, in the Philippines. And these are some of the comments that I got during the discussions with the teachers. For example, in terms of the activity, some were saying that there were a lot of discussions happening as they read through the practice record, or the activity, the main question given by the teacher of which is which one holds true, seemed to be very simple at first. There was active participation, and it's like the lesson and the same topic has been repeating again and again and again. When it comes to what are some of their comments or impressions of the students in the practice record, they were saying that, oh, they seem to be curious, confident, because they would just say what they want to say, and they are critical thinking. Some commented that they were reflecting, discussing their ideas, or even questioning the idea of the teacher. Like, what did you use? Is this really mathematics class? And then for the teachers, they were saying that the examples that were given were not mathematical. The teacher was using student answer to transform it into question, and the teacher was very patient in waiting for students' answer. So these are some of the things that I got, some feedback or impressions about the practice record. And in my group, I was actually very happy because one of the teachers is a math teacher. So we were talking about the triangle and the quadrilateral, trying to answer it on your own. So this is one of really the importance of reading practice records is you just don't read, but you try to imagine what is happening in that classroom, and then you relate it to yourself. So when we read practice records, what we do is we try to follow that long process of learning or inquiry that took place. If you finish this, probably even tomorrow, the day after, you might want to look into what was the learning story that the teacher is trying to make public. Because you wrote it down and you give it to someone, it's now a public property. So this is an example of the practice record. Sorry, it's all in Japanese, but the teachers write these things here in Japan. So we try to make sense of what is that the story happening in that unit, what was present, and what were the students learning or not learning. So let me share with you one of the things on how we really think or read through that learning story. So here, in the first part, you probably have noticed that the teacher was trying to elaborate on what is the importance of proof. Because if you look at the Japanese math book, so it's in English, proving starts like this. Anyway, I think it's very common that you give them a quadrilateral and then they start proving. But in the end, the students really struggle as to why am I learning this? So the teacher wanted to motivate the students, encourage the students by using that notion of persuasion and connecting it with the idea of proving. So the teacher had given the students these 6 statements and math propositions. And then the question was very simple. Does it hold true? And so it had initiated students thinking in their discussion. Some of the students were asking, is this really math? Oh, wait, sushi. Do you know sushi? So there are different kinds of sushi. So is it always true? Does that always hold true? What does it mean when we say now it holds true? So in the discussions, there were some counter examples being given, like the notion of getting older. It's ambiguous. It's not clear. And then there were, for example, in proposition 3, What are these what angles are we referring to? That's not very clear. And then when we speak of calories, how? Calorie of a sushi, but there's a lot of sushi. So that notion is also very vague. So that the students are able now to arrive at conclusion that, hey, if we're looking at something that always hold true, and for math teachers here, you know that statement is very important, clear definitions are needed to support the statement. So instead of the teacher telling that to the students, it's the students from the activity who realized it. So now they're now focusing on statements 1, 3, 4, and 6, and trying to look for counterexamples. Are there negative odd numbers? Does a line have an endpoint? Are the lines on the same plane? Skew lines are some counterexamples. So you see from this 6 relatively simple looking sentences, the students are digging deeper into the mathematics. So this is what Professor Maitre was saying a while ago, that as we leave the students to discover and learn on their own, we are also going, as teachers, we will be able to see that they are capable of thinking and collaborating. And then from statements 1, 3, 4, 6, then they looked at, okay, the skew lines are our counterexample. And then there, as they focus now on some of the statements, you could see here some discussions among the students. And this, as a teacher, if you write about it, listen and record it, you actually get to capture what the students are actually thinking. So in this case, given this one, how can we really explain how can we explain those statements that always hold true? So the students are now linking the properties of integers and figures that they have learned in the previous topics, in the previous math lessons, to the current topic. And this is, for us math teacher, this is what is proving is all about. It's not just as they see this quadrilateral, they try to prove the thing, but actually we would want them in this process of proving to be able to use the different theorems and different conjectures that they have learned previously to be able to make a point and prove. And then the students, as a result, were asking now, why is the sum of all the angles of a quadrilateral 360? So from there, it's no longer just discussion, but the students are actually relying on objects around them to be able to show that, hey, this is how we can answer that question, or how we can prove that that particular statement is true. And so one of the students said, so then now they are able to arrive at these kinds of figures. And the teacher is now able to say that, this one is actually part of what you will study in high school. And as a result, the students feel more confident that, oops, I'm not yet in high school. I'm still in junior high school, but we are already learning this. I'm capable of thinking these things. So in this process, or at least in that practice record, what was I able to read? That there were individual and group thinking and a lot of reflections. There were multiple levels of sharing and thinking. They were trying it on their own first, and then small group, and then the small groups are being connected through that whole class discussion. And then when they see something that, oops, wait, I had a different idea, they go back to their small group and then rediscuss again. The students are building on the familiar objects to mathematical proof. So this is in the chat box, I saw a while ago a question on how do we prepare students for group work or encourage them to do group work. One of the things really that as a teacher you have to do is to set up the environment so that it would be a safe group work kind of place. Because if the students could only talk to their classmates during the allotted time for group work, then that would not be enough, because they would see it as one of those teaching approaches again, that we only get to talk or with our classmates during the group work time. But actually the main essence of doing group work is for them to be able to discuss their ideas naturally with others. So if the classroom will be set up like this, little by little, the students are going to embrace doing group works. And then in this practice records, as you read through it, I'm not going to tap the reflection part because you might not have reached that one given the time limitation. But the teacher actually was listening closely to student ideas. You can read through that because one group said this, and so the teacher would raise it in front, tell the whole class, and so everybody can debate or discuss about it. So those are some of the things that we were able to get from the practice record. And if I look into that longitudinal process of learning, I can see here that it's the class is building on from previous experience. Like they started with the familiar statements given by the teacher, and then they were defining. Anyway, I'll give this to you. You can just go through this. I know we don't have enough time, but what we're trying to say here is that we see learning, inquiry learning, as a process, as a spiraling process of inquiry. And we make this spiraling process of inquiry more visible as teachers write practice records and as teachers read the practice records of other teachers. So that in reading and writing practice records, it allows one, as you write about it, because you need to write about it, you need to listen to your students, you need to really focus on your classes, then it cultivates your own professional competence. You do not lie on what you write there, but by writing and thinking about it, you actually develop your own confidence in teaching, your own competence in teaching. And as you do this for a longer period of time, then all the more that you become better as a teacher. These practice records for us also, because teachers are very busy. You guys have to do a lot of things, but you also have to learn a lot of things. So by having this paper now, it's more cost effective because you don't have to experience them yourselves. You just have to read. You know, you just need to read through it, and now you're learning from each other. And then you're also learning other materials that other teachers are using. It's an avenue for both individual and collaborative professional reflection. I'm just so sad right now that we're doing this online, but at least we can do it together online. Just imagine if we were in one room, we're reading the same thing together, we could probably have very meaningful and deep exchanges. So it could also be used for collaborative professional reflection. Yeah, I know I don't have time anymore. But what would I just, probably I would just end up with this one. By asking teachers to write about their practices, they would be able, they can read it alone. I'm giving you a copy because you might want to read it afterwards. They can read it with their colleagues. You can read it with a group. You can read it in school or at home. It could be used for trainings, especially, for example, at NIE, if you're a professor and you would want to have some discussions about a certain class, you don't have a video, you can just use practice records. And this reading then leads to reflection. Okay? And it also develops our own competency to be able to observe classes, not just to look at the teacher, but really follow through the learning of the students. With that, I would want to say thank you.
So thank you so much, Professor, for your wonderful presentation. So we'd like to thank you so much.